That's fine. All righty. All right, everybody, welcome. You know, we are here on Stan Prokopenko's website, and we're going to be doing a little bit of streaming today. I'm the guest instructor for this particular installment. My name is Jeff Watts. I run an atelier called Watts Atelier of the Arts here in San Diego. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a really traditional atelier. We do a lot of very intense training year-round. Stan was actually one of my star students many years ago, and was with me for probably about a decade in his training. And it's so amazing and wonderful to see students going out and doing very unique things. You know, not everyone's got that entrepreneurial spirit or is going to go in that direction, but Stan definitely always exemplified a lot of that, and it's really wonderful to see what he's been able to put together. And so I'm very happy to be a part of it. What I'll be doing today here is just a glimpse into a next level of a graphite long drawing, which I'm teaching in our next streaming term that starts Monday. And so this is actually something I had on the board as it's the first 2 hours of demo from that class. So the students will ultimately watch me take it through the whole thing. Obviously today we only have an hour or so to actually do this. So I'll be going over some basic materials real quick, and then my basic thought process and procedure for how I execute a drawing. This would be no different if it was a portrait probably, or any other subject for that matter. We go through a linear lay-in, which has already been done. Then goes a layer of mapping, which is basically delineating where the light and the dark meets, both halftone and major shadow tones. That's where we're at right here. This is what you're seeing right here is the mapped phase, which is the second phase of the process that we use in our school. And we use comparative measurement. Some of you are from site size. Some of you wonder what the difference between the two are. I'm a big fan of comparative measurement simply because it's a little bit more tenacious style of drawing, lends itself more to you know, concept art, storyboarding, visual development, invention work, imaginative realism, you know, areas where you're going to have to manipulate reference, idealize reference, not copy reference. And site size is a wonderful approach, but one I think that should probably maybe be the first year of your training, and then quickly getting past that, because it just has a tendency to be laboriously long and fine for fine art, but not really geared towards illustration and other quicker modalities of professional areas of work from what I've seen. So it's just, you know, 6.5 one, half a dozen the other. Who, you know, you're going to be on one side or the other. I try not to really pick sides. I like good information and I like good execution, no matter how it happens. So some questions will be coming in, obviously. Let me just address some really quick materials, and then I'll get into drawing. And as I'm drawing, I'll be happy to answer questions. I'm very comfortable talking and executing simultaneously. After 30 years of doing this stuff, you get pretty good at that, and I enjoy it quite a lot. So I'll wrap some philosophical bantering in there. Hopefully things that'll be meaningful to you on many different levels, inspirational wise as well as execution wise. I like to talk and communicate while I do what I do, because I think it's extremely important. But really, ultimately, we are talking about a visual language here. So theoretically, it could be done with very little speaking, but that's not my style. So we'll have some fun with it. But anyway, I'll be doing a lot of the heavy lifting today with an HB click pencil, just a little pencil where it's an 07. You can use an 05 as well. And basically you insert them in here. You open it up by clicking, and then you slide them down in there, the little lead inserts, and then I'll be going ahead and drawing with that. Now another one we could use similar to that is this guy here, which would require putting it in this little sharpener. And that's another good one. And again, you can see the inserts. This one's about half length. You can get them in different hardnesses. You can also use the old-fashioned just run of pencils from HB to 2B to 3B to 4B to 5B to 6B all the way up to 10B. Remember, the H's are hard, so when you go to the right side or left side, whatever way you want to remember it, in the H's, it's going to be H, and the higher H you go, the harder the pencil. I don't use past maybe a 2H or an H most of the time, because I don't find any need to be, etching my drawing with something that's so hard, like a 9H or something. But there will be people that will use them, and that's fine. You can find that sweet spot for you. The B's are going to be HB is going to be right in the middle, right? HB right in the middle between those two, and that's going to be your heavy lifting pencil, the one you're going to do majority of your drawing with. Fs are pretty good too. And then you can always skip numbers too. You can go 2B, 4B, 6B, 8B, because you really don't need every pencil number. I mean, you can skip numbers because you can get more out of a pencil than normally what the number is on it. These are nice too, these woodless graphite. This happens to be a 4B, so that's going to be a very soft pencil when we get up into the higher levels of getting to the darks. The one thing I don't like about graphite is the fact that it goes shiny versus charcoal that goes matte. And I like that matte look. I don't like to be looking at the drawing and have it all like a crazy sheen at certain angles. That's just my own personal feel towards graphite. But I love graphite for learning design, compartmentalizing shape, learning to design shape off of what you see. So it's part what you see, part what you know. That's going to be academic training. What you see is going to be from life drawing and things from live models and things of that sort. And then you're going to have what you want to see as the last part of the equation. And that's going to be the Frazettas. That's going to be the great inventors, Lord Leighton and guys like that. And I mean, all these different, Buscema and mostly the comic artist genre guys, the concept guys, they're all going to be drawing mostly what they want to see, not so much what they see. Now, that's a complicated set of equations. We'll talk more as I get into it.
Jeff, actually, speaking of reference, we're not allowed to share the reference because of YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won't be showing the reference. I was about to, so that's good. Thank you. What I will be doing is showing this little, when I first started the pose, I went in and I basically broke it down into a simple geometric sculptural outline of where I needed to fit this thing on the page and the biggest possible simplification of the complex forms. So most people will draw like the deltoid into the tricep, into the elbow, down into the fingers, and they draw a round form. And it's very difficult to control proportion in that methodology. So what we do is we draw through form. We use long sweeping arcing lines. We drop plumb lines, which are dead vertical lines off of key points. Those points could be bony landmarks such as the 7th cervical vertebrae, the acromion process, the great trochanter, the fibula. Those are bones that are close to the surface and can be palpated, meaning they can be felt. Those are what we call bony landmarks, and they're very good for measuring off of. We also use angle lines, plumb lines, angle lines, negative shapes, positive shapes. And these are the tools of comparative measurement. They're estimating generalizations of placement. They're not perfect. They never will be. They're not meant to be. We need to get in the ballpark, and then we need to lock it down with our knowledge. And that is where a lot of people lose it because they don't have a lot of knowledge. They haven't trained academically to the point where they've absorbed that knowledge visually by repetition and are able to recall that information at a moment's notice in the middle of a life drawing when the model's slightly moving or things of that sort. If you're working from a piece of statuary where it's never going to move, or a photograph for that matter, then it's not going to be as challenging, right? This model, if he was sitting there, his arm would start to fall asleep and it would adjust a little bit. And, when he got back into the pose, we'd have it taped off, but it wouldn't be perfect. And he'd have to find his way back in, and it's going to be slightly different. And you're going to have to work a little bit from your memorization or your recall. There's no way around it. Same thing when you draw animals at the zoo or anything like that's moving. So this is where comparative measurement adapts better, in my opinion, than maybe sight size. Where sight size works absolutely phenomenal from stationary objects that don't move. Statuary, plaster casts, things of that sort. But when you get a live model, they're going to move. There's no way to keep them from moving. I don't care how much you tape them off or how good of a model it is going to be movements. And when those movements occur, what are you supposed to do if you're using a rigid gridding system? You're going to have to adapt somehow because it's changing right in front of you. The shadow patterns are changing subtly, the body. So anyway, these are things to think about as you venture into your training. Now, again, I'm not here to say anything negative about sight size because there's many, many wonderful schools, Florence Academy, Grand Central, just to mention a few. And they're wonderful areas to train. I personally am going to always be probably biased towards this style of training because I think the aesthetics of it and the speed and efficiency of it are unmatched from what I've seen. They're very difficult to argue with. I will also normally go over and do a small thumbnail breaking down maybe where I want to lose edges, like a lost edge, or do I want to lose the light of the elbow into the light of the background, or do I want to put a little tone back there to pop it forward? Do I want to lose this shadow arm into completely, even though we know there's lines there, right, in reality, but we're going to use what's called our fourth edge, which is our mystery edge. It's a lost edge, an edge that just seems to disappear. Now we can push and pull form very effectively with that. As you can see in this, even this little sketch here that's not much bigger than my thumb. We call them thumbnails. We call them preliminary sketches. They're just the iterations of this pose before I actually commit to it for 10 hours or something, or 15 hours. Now, this class will be 5 weeks, and it'll be about an hour and a half demo each week. And then the people that are in it will actually send in their work, and then I will do tracing layovers over their particular image, fixing whatever issues I see, talking about calligraphy, talking about idealization of form, talking about proportion. And then I will send that back to them, and then they will be able to watch theirs as well as 15 other people's in the class layovers each week. And so that's kind of how we run our streaming program. And again, we have the traditional program, brick and mortar, where you come in person. We have the streaming, and then we have the actual very robust 1,200 plus hours of our core program, which is a membership-based program. So you can look into that. It's wattsatelier.com if you're interested. I don't want to spend all my time sales pitching you guys and all this kind of stuff. You'll gravitate towards it if it seems to be of your liking or the way I communicate. We have about 10 different teachers all trained in this style that have been with me 15 plus years. Stan was, again, one of those. So you're going to see the quality consistency appearing all over the place, and that's what I'm so proud of, because it really is a beautiful style of drawing that I really want to share with you. This is not the norm that we do. We normally work in charcoal on smooth newsprint. This is kind of one of the higher up finishing classes. Now, I like it for beginners, and I like it for really advanced. Beginners, because it gives you extra time to do the lay-in. Like in a 2-hour class or a 3-hour class, you might have 20 minutes to get a lay-in in, or to get to this level right here, you're looking at, you might have a half an hour if you want to get a finished drawing. Whereas in a 10-hour plus drawing, you can spend 3 hours just on the lay-in, 3 hours on the mapping, or 2 hours, well, not 3 hours, but you'd go like 2 hours on the linear, maybe an hour to 2 hours on the mapping, and then you just bring it up from there. So I'm about to walk you through the next stages of this drawing. Some of the inspiration that I use before we get into questions is some of the Russian books. Now, these Russian books are kind of rare. This one I believe I might have gotten on a trip with Stan, with his family, to Russia. I took with him years ago, and it was such a wonderful trip, and was such a fun way to see all the wonderful work there. But this book has chock full of really wonderful long drawings that you can borrow calligraphy from. When I say borrow calligraphy, it's the way that they model their form. Here you can see the leg slightly laid in. Here you can see it more finished, and all this cross contouring and the way that it's modeled or rendered. I may want to borrow some of that and get it into my drawing. Well, the best way to do that is do a life study of this drawing, similar to the one I'm going to be doing first, and then get a pose like the one we have and try to inject into it some of the calligraphy and idealization that you memorized or were exposed to by actually studying this drawing, right? And just make sure you pick drawings that you want your drawings to look like, because otherwise you're kind of putting into your brain information that you don't really want to regurgitate, or you don't really want to have be utilized in your drawings, and that's not what we want, right? So just be very discerning, and I would help you with that, obviously choosing ones, but ultimately it's going to be up to you. But there's some just wonderful, wonderful drawings in here, and I don't want to spend too much time on that because our time is of the essence here. So okay, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to start around the head, fill in my next level, right? So I've done the linear lay-in, which you're not able to see because it's already been done. I've laid in the mapping, which is, these two stages, in my opinion, encompass about 90% of 75% of your drawing is in this part. This is where most of your observational prowess, your dexterity, your analyzation skills. Is this hard? Is this firm? Is it a hard firm? Is it a soft firm? We're talking about edges now. That's these little areas that are containing shapes, right? And these shapes are pieces of anatomical information. There's epicondyles, there's fascia, there's ligaments and tendons and muscle bodies and fat pads. And all this comprises what we need to navigate. Now, it's hard to design and lasso shapes that you don't understand what they represent. And hence that'll fire us back into academic training in anatomy. That could be sculptural écorchés, which mean sculpting a splayed figure, which is one of the most advanced ways to study anatomy. It means keeping a sketchbook full of Bridgman drawings and Hogarth drawings and drawings from comic artists and drawings from other Russian artists and people that you admire, myself, other, Jacob Collin. I mean, whoever's out there that you really love their drawings, right? So I've got some bridges here. Here's one bridge that Jim Hahn, who teaches for us, who's an awesome graphite draftsman, made. And you can rest your hand on that and keep it from running across all your delicate work that you're doing, smudging it, right? Some people wear gloves. I'm not really a big fan, just me personally, but it's okay if you want to. Here's another one that's really fancy, and it's got a little bit of a foam pad in here. The problem with this one, these little rubber grommets here, they have a tendency to leave little dots all over your drawing, and it kind of annoys me. I just need to figure out a way to keep it from doing that. So I'm going to use this other one instead. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to lay in a middle value. So let's say 0 is black and 10 is white. We have an infinite number of values in between those two extremes that we need to use to manipulate and make this look realistic on a flat surface. Okay, we've got our map, so now we got to fill in our map. Now this is a lot easier, right? The hard part's been done, in my opinion. Anyone that understood how to read a map right now could take this drawing and bring it up. But I'm going to show you how to do that, right? And so lassoing your shapes is an art. I learned it through gouache painting. We can get into that. I get into that heavily into my online program. We have a very, very, very structured curriculum with 30 years of development. So it takes you from point A to point B and gets you rocking good, really smoking good. But it does take a lot of time. And that's one thing I will be honest about. There is no fast, cheap, easy way to masterful drafting and painting. I haven't seen it yet. So let me know if you find it. But in the meantime, if you have some questions, Andrew, I'll be happy to start addressing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So B. Duncan Campbell asks, "Hi Jeff, I've been following the Watts online and streaming programs for a while now, and I'm starting to get a grasp on some of the fundamentals of drawing thanks to them. One thing I'm not sure about is when is a good time to start painting alongside drawing. I know I've got a long way to go before my fundamentals are really solid, so I'm thinking it might be best to wait until then. But maybe it's best to start soon, getting some experience as soon as possible. I was wondering if you had any advice for artists who find themselves in that situation. Thanks, Ben C. P.S. Good luck with the demo. Can't wait to see it."
Hey, Ben. Great to hear from you, and thank you so much. Yeah, I got a lot to say about that. There are a lot of different, camps, right? You're going to get a lot of people with strong opinions. Some are going to say, if you're over in the Russian schools or you're in China, they're going to say, okay, listen, you're going to do 5-6 years of drawing before we let you touch a paintbrush. You're going to go through cast drawing for 2 years. They're very rigid, right? And they're very strong because of that, right? But I have a different opinion about that. I think freedom with responsibility, right? I wanted to be a painter from day one. I knew it. I knew that was where my end game was. I knew that's where I wanted to end up. And I started painting classes right first semester in the school I went to. And that's the same school Jeremy Lipkin went to. It's the same school Glenn Orbick, Mark Westemo, just a slew of them. Tony Pro, Greg Pro, who's mostly now over in Imagineering. A lot of these guys went into the movie industry because the school was located in Los Angeles, and that's where most of the money is in entertainment. That's where the really good pay is. Animation, even just, live action work and things of that sort. And so to get back to it, when I went to school, I knew I wanted to be a painter, mostly a easel painter. That means like a John Singer Sargent type or a Sorolla type or one of those kind of guys. And I wanted to get going. I didn't want to wait 3 years to start doing it. So I told my teachers my concerns. I told them my interests, and I had a good attitude. And that was really the caveat. I had a really good attitude about failure. I didn't mind doing bad paintings and scrubbing them. I didn't take it personally. I didn't bog down my instructor with ridiculous questions because I was such a newbie. I just said, listen, I want to be in there. I know I'm going to do bad paintings, but I won't. But I just want to be in there. So they let me in there early, and I did fine. I did a lot of bad paintings. I scrubbed endless ones. I worked in monochrome mostly, which was burnt umber and white, which is another thing that I feel very strongly about, is working your way up a hierarchy of very structured palettes until you've mastered each one of them. You would start with burnt umber pick out, which is very similar to a drawing method, as close as you're going to see. Then you would add white, and you'd have burn umber and white, and you'd start learning how to get cool looking brush strokes, but you're not worried about color, you're just worried about value. Then you go into the Zorn palette, which is a 4-color palette, Anders Zorn, Swedish painter. Then you go into warm cool palette, which is the palette you'll use mostly for the rest of your life. And then you'll go into an uncontrolled level 4 palette, which means you add your own supplemental colors of interest. Oh, I like this purple. Oh, I like this particular green. Someone else may not. But you may add it as a convenience color on your palette just because you enjoy it. You enjoy the, playing around with it. So you can get into some very rigid styles of, color and painting and palettes. And I'm very flexible with my palette choices. But anyway, I started early. And I always had an idea of a 70-30 split, 70% drawing, 30% painting in the beginning for maybe the first 3 to 5 years that you're training seriously. And that would be, that would be what I would suggest. And then as your drawing proficiency comes up. Now, one of the reasons I feel so strongly about drawing is because it's a cheap way, if taught properly, to learn how to paint. If you work in a tonal Riley method like we do, and we teach this method that's very well adapted to designing or to help nurture future painters, right? That's the whole purpose of it. Because drawing, in my opinion, as much as I love it, and I always will, is not an end game at all. It's very difficult to make a primary living just off of drawing. But drawing is the linchpin to painting. So it's a bit of a catch-22. Can't paint really well if you can't draw really well. Drawing's a cheap way to get to painting. So if you're a young student with not an exorbitant amount of money at your disposal, you don't have deep pockets, so to speak, then you're going to want to do it the smartest, most economical way possible, which would be to learn most of your visual memory developed through a drawing method and then converted over to your other more boutique or expensive mediums, gouache, oil, even digital. Digital's fairly reasonable. I mean, ultimately, you got to invest in a Cintiq or a laptop or some software, Procreate, Photoshop, something. But that's so. Anyway, you start with these concepts and then we expand on them. Now, everybody has to use common sense. If you feel really overwhelmed, then stick with drawing for a little bit longer. If you feel pretty emboldened and you love the idea of painting, even though it's not going to go all that great, and you have a good teacher that knows what they're doing, then you got a safety net there, right? I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to prop you up by coming on your painting and fixing it and adjusting it and painting right on it, making it look the way we would like it to look. And then you can take and garner a little bit out of that. So if you've got someone willing to teach that way, which is rare, but if you do, then you can get into painting a lot earlier because you're safe, because you've got someone there that's constantly fixing and helping you through those trials and tribulations of learning how to paint. That's my take on that. So what I'm doing right now is I'm filling in my gap. I'm just filling in my map. And I'm not trying to nail the value of what I see on the reference or the model if it was in front of me. I'm simply using a placeholder in order to get to see whether or not my placement when I mapped it is as good as I think it might be. And this is my second chance to make any adjustments that are necessary before I commit fully to a full value rendition of either the reference or the model that's in front of me. And then I will take that drawing up to a full value finish. Now what that means is different to everybody, but that's where you go to other inspirational drawings to try to find clues as to what look that you want your drawing to even have. And a lot of times people don't have a firm understanding of what they want to do in the beginning, so they need somebody else to lean on, some other master. And again, it could be me, it could be one of the guys from our school, Eric, it could be one of your teachers, it could be one of the a deceased artist that you just really admire that you found on Pinterest or on Instagram or something. Could be a contemporary artist that you really just love the way they, the way they work. Like I said, myself or anyone, that's decent, that seems to have a good handle on this stuff, that you could actually mimic their calligraphy or their working methodology, if possible, to see it like you are right now, which is really a luxury. But again, a lot of great stuff Stan's bringing to you guys. And again, you'll then find your way onto their program, and maybe you do that for a while, maybe jump over to our program, maybe go over to Schoolism, you go over to New Masters. I mean, there's a lot of good options out there, but you need to find the one that works best for you and has the best well thought out program. And that's just going to take a little bit of time for each one of you to figure out what that looks like for each one of you. Go ahead.
So Rebecca Chappelle asks, "Hi Jeff, I'm a massive fan of yours as well as an art supplies enthusiast. I'd love to know your favorite brands of charcoal, pencil, paper, and eraser, please. Do you always use an easel? Thanks, Becky."
Hey Becky, yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes. I nerd out a lot on materials. You know, I'm not mostly canvas textures and things of that sort and absorbency, because that seems to be the thing that will influence the look of your work the most is the surface. The paint's not so much, the brushes not so much. The knowledge, your hand dexterity, of course, would be the first thing, and then the surfaces seem to be very instrumental in dictating a subtle look of a piece of art that's done by hand. I like newsprint. I've yet to find a paper I like as much as it, really. Unfortunate part is it's not very archival. It's quite easy to damage, which does force discipline and forces people to be more intentional with their execution, which I think anything that forces you to be more deliberate, more conscientious is a good thing when you're in your student years. Later, you can find your way into more lenient or other things, but it's really very important that you learn discipline, and that's one of the things, again, that I absolutely love digital work. I think it's a fantastic medium, but it is pretty easy to cheat in, and it's pretty easy to undo things that you've done if you've damaged something. On a surface, if you damage the surface, you're kind of screwed. You really aren't going to be able to do much with that. And that forces you to be a little bit more vigilant, careful, watchful, and disciplined, and it cultivates a different sense of reverence and respect for the process, I think. And that's one reason I also enjoy it so much, and also like young students to work in it so much, because I mean, many of you will probably go on, quite frankly, to careers that require quite heavy digital applications to execute because of speed and efficiency, especially if you end up in the entertainment industry, movie industry. It's going to be almost essential because the deadlines are so crushingly difficult that you can't do a lot of. You could probably execute, if you were extremely good, as fast as a digital, but you couldn't make the corrections that the art director would want as quick as a digital artist would, and that's where you really run into a bit of a wall. So I could talk for hours about that kind of stuff. But I'd say material-wise, the Conte 1710B is our charcoal pencil of choice these days. I used to love the Ritmos. I loved the Blaisdells. I loved the Barrels. These are all past pencils that have gone bye-bye. Usually, any pencil you fall in love with, it's almost guaranteed at some point a company will buy them out and probably get rid of it, and you'll be stuck having to try to find a new pencil. But we also use the Wolf Carbons. I use the 4B, 6B Wolf Carbons a lot. I like them. They're a little brittle. They're a little skinny compared to the Contes, but they do work very nicely as well. There's some other ones out there that we're starting to play around with, but I wouldn't probably put my seal of approval on them yet because I haven't used them long enough to really see if I want to say, hey, that's one of the ones I would really encourage. I'm trying to think what else. Erasers, kneaded erasers, just the little guys like this that you basically knead into, knead like this, and then you can see it gets a lighter gray. That means there's still some life left in it, but if it was black right now with charcoal and it was not getting lighter, I would say it's time to throw it in the trash and get a new one. Very cheap, but you can use that. You can use, like, again, the click erasers at different sizes and shapes to carve and cut in between, especially when you're doing graphite. But when I'm doing charcoal, I only use a kneaded eraser and one of the pencils I just mentioned, and I use newsprint. When we get into this kind, I'm using a Fabriano right now, which is a handmade paper, but they make so many different kinds of papers that I can't quite frankly tell you which one's my favorite, because I haven't done 10,000 drawings like I have on newsprint on these kind of papers. And I'm not exaggerating when I say the numbers either. So I've probably done only 50 long graphite drawings versus tens of thousands of other ones. So of course I'm going to be a little more comfortable on the other surfaces because I've done so much more on them. So there'll be some experimentation necessary. The Bristols are really good. The 400 ply, the 500 ply. Bristol is probably the one I encourage most people to do because it takes a lot more abuse than this one will. This hand paper will rip up pretty quickly compared to a vellum Bristol that's a little bit higher ply or a little bit more durable. So that's kind of my take on that one. I hope that helped a little bit.
So she has a few more questions. Do you always use easels to draw?
No, I mean, well, these are drawing horses, we call them. But this, you just want a comfortable position with which to work with your whole arm, right? You're sweeping your whole arm. You're working from your wrist in this method to your elbow to your shoulder, and you don't want to be cramped up. Standing, I've never had a really great time standing and drawing. I've seen people do it. I prefer to do that with painting. So we sit on these benches that are quite comfortable for long hours, and and are positioned properly so that you can keep the board so you can see the whole drawing and pull it up. So I don't know if you mean this drawing board as an easel, because I don't ever draw on easels. At least I've never demonstrated on one that I'm aware of, and I don't normally do it. Can I do it? Yes. Do I like doing it? No. So I'm not saying you can't, and I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying I don't. So basically, I'm more comfortable sitting and drawing for long. If you're drawing for 6 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, standing on your feet, I don't care if you have a stress pad underneath it or whatever, it's going to be hard on you. You're gonna get cramps. It's gonna be hard on you, right? So sitting and relaxing in a comfortable position that's conducive, I think, is a better way to go for longer efforts. Okay, anything from 3+ hours.
She also asked another question, please, Jeff. What do you think of the grid drawing method for obtaining accuracy in drawing? Thank you, Becky.
It's okay. Again, preferably you want to be able to freehand, right? So if you use an opaque projector, or you use a grid, or you use a transfer sheet, or you use site size, they're all crutches. Ultimately, they're usable and they're effective, but it depends. Again, if I was doing a 30-foot Sistine Chapel type painting, yeah, I'm going to grid that thing out. I'm going to have to. Projectors, or again, opaque projectors, are something I've used most of my career, but I only used them once I graduated to them from freehand drawing from live models, copious amounts of hours doing that. Some of you don't have the luxury of having access to models, so you would work from photos, and that's a second best, but you can definitely get good working entirely from photos. But the gridding systems, again, just be careful that they don't become a crutch, meaning you rely on them too heavily. Like this drawing's freehand, right? I'm estimating and guessing my spatial relationships between not only small negative and positive shapes between my my halftones that have to be clarified, because when I look at the photo reference, which unfortunately we can't show you, it's all blown out on this shoulder, right? This shoulder trap right here is getting the light hitting it at a right angle, and there's not much there. So I'm actually digging into it based on knowledge of anatomy that I know exists underneath the skin. The depth of knowledge I have in anatomy is ridiculous, right? And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm not saying that to show off. I'm just saying I have spent tens of thousands of hours studying anatomy. And a lot of you would say, you're crazy, Jeff. I would never do that. I just don't have it in me. I don't like it that much. It's boring to me, and I can barely get through one class in it. And I would say, well, then you got a long road to hoe. It's going to be difficult, because every little halftone that I see on his body, I need to assess what it is, what it should be. Why am I not seeing it better than I think I should? And how do I want to draw it to make it look better than what I'm seeing? Because ultimately, my drawing is all anyone's going to see. They're not going to see the model. They're not going to see the reference. They're just going to see this result. And they're either going to be incredibly impressed with it and want to buy it, or they're not going to like it much, and they're not even going to give a second thought to it. They're just going to walk past it, or whatever, it looks weird. I don't know. So we as artists are entertainers, but we also need to know what it is we're doing, how we're speaking to our audience. And that's nuance, and that's knowledge, and that's academic knowledge. And that's very much like studying academia in college or in high school. It's like studying English. It's like studying math. It's like I know a lot of artists hate to hear that, because they got into art because they don't like math and they don't like English a lot of times, and they don't want to do academics. They want to just play around and draw cool, fun-looking stuff like video game stuff and everything. And that's totally cool. But the really good guys, the Craig Mullins, the Jamie Jones, the elite, the Nathan Falks, all these guys that are working on these upper echelon areas know their stuff. They did not hack it. They did not try to they went and they trained properly for a long time. And then they ventured into the profession and became known for certain things, So anyway, a lot of you I know want to work professionally. Many of you have aspirations probably to do something with this stuff. If you don't, great. just enjoy and have fun and work at a high level for yourself. And that's the ideal place to be. But if you do say, yes, I want to go, work in the movie industry. I've always wanted to work for Blizzard. I've always wanted to work for DreamWorks, or I love Disney and it's just Pixar's my dream job. Then to get there, you'll want to set a course of action that is very disciplined, very strict, very intelligent, and you'll want probably, most likely, someone to guide you through that, because it's just too much to ask for you to figure that out on your own unless you already know it. And that's where people like myself come in, Stan, and all the other guys that are presenting information in a way that helps people to further their growth and upliftment in their endeavors in their art, right? Whether it's, again, to be a commercial illustrator or a fine artist or an animator, it all requires exceptional skill to be able to do it at an upper echelon level, professional level, where you're going to be competing with guys like me, Eric. So when you watch us draw, just think, we're the people you're going to be going up against for jobs, right? I mean, and so you just want to know that. You don't want to depress you, but you do want to say, oh, okay, I need to be that good. Oh, okay. I need to really work a little harder. I need to be a little more disciplined, or I need to be a little more focused, or I need to find a place to do that, depending on, again, how you learn and where you're at and how old you are and what your goals are. And all those things are things I can't necessarily, I can't determine those for you, but I can help you once I understand what it is your goals are. And then we can start directing your energies with intelligence and pushing you towards realizing your goals and dreams and aspirations. So again, I'm filling in these little areas, and then I'm going to take another look at them. I don't want them to be too confusing. I don't want them to be too simple. I don't want them to be too complex. I don't want them to be too straight. I don't want them to be too curved. I don't want them to be too hard. I don't want them to be too soft. I want all these different concepts working together visually, poetically, to express this particular drawing of Reed. And I want to make it not just Reed, but Reed 2.0. I want to make it the best version of Reed that I can do. And I'm going to chisel the jaw a little bit more. I'm going to angle this particular part to make it more heroic. I'm going to have opinions about what makes him look the way he does, and how I could make him look even better than he does. And that's what you're going to be asked to do as a professional. Not to make things look worse than they do, not to make things look uglier than they are, but to make things look the best version of them. I don't care whether it's a witch or a goblin or a sinister character or a really heroic character. You want the best sinister character that you can get. And it needs to have cool shapes. It needs to have all kinds of cool nuance and beautiful shape design. And it has to have good value control. And ultimately it has to have compelling color harmonies and all these things in order to tell the narrative, the story. Now, whether that story, a book cover, a movie poster, an interior of a graphic novel, a storyboard session of a movie, a concept background, whatever, you're working on a concept as a concept artist for background painting for Disney, it doesn't matter. It's all the same stuff. They want cool looking stuff. That's what they're paying you for, right? So that's what we're going to try to get into. What makes this back look cool? What makes this shoulder girdle look cool? How do I design a nice deltoid? What is a cool looking clavicle or scapula, excuse me? What does that look like? What would that look like? Well, hopefully I'll be able to show you, and then you'll know a little bit more. You'll look at the reference that I'm using. You'll see where I've made changes. You'll agree with those changes and want to memorize them, or you won't and you'll let them go. And as we go together through this journey, I'm going to be helping to cultivate your eye, put your eye in place, so to speak. And we're also going to forge, through proper execution in these methods that are difficult, a really subtle dexterity, which will allow you to translate what your eye is seeing and what your mind wants to do with what it's seen and deliver it onto a surface, whether that be a canvas, a digital pad, a piece of Fabriano, watercolor, it doesn't matter. But see, this is the process that we want to talk about, because this is the process that we need to put in place to do anything decent whatsoever in the arts, representationally. Now, if we want to go into abstract expressionism, we can take all these rules and flush them down the toilet and just say, hey, there are no rules. Now that sounds really kind of cool, but for me, it's too liberating. It's too open. It's too unbridled. I would like some containment for my knowledge to be able to challenge myself to do certain things. So that's just me personally. I have no total vendetta against abstract art at whatsoever. And I actually will sometimes incorporate abstractions into my painting, representational painting and backgrounds and things of that sort. But when called upon to do so. Okay, next question.
So Peter Abraham asks, "Hi Jeff, what would you say is the best way to combine graphite and charcoal in a drawing? For example, would you start with the graphite lay-in followed by a charcoal rendering? Can you then go back to the graphite over the charcoal for finer detail, for example? Are there anything you would avoid when combining the two? For example, if putting graphite over charcoal doesn't work well? Looking forward to the live stream. I'm in the UK, so a bit later for me. Will the stream be available to view later? Many thanks, Pete."
Hey Pete, welcome from over the pond there, across the pond. Yeah, no worries, man. I mean, yeah, you should be able to see this. I don't know how long Stan's keeping it up, to tell you the truth, but I think it'll probably be on his YouTube channel, probably from here on out, I would imagine. Let's think about all these questions that you had. I don't like to blend charcoal and graphite. They're kind of like water and oil to me. Like when you use a layer of graphite, it gets kind of shiny and it's kind of it'll kind of skid, like the charcoal will skid over it, right? It doesn't take to it very well. So I don't personally let those play well together. I mean, I might use it for a background, the charcoal, but again, then what we're going to run into is the charcoal being matte and wherever we use graphite being shiny. And so you're going to get a really weird pattern of shininess to dullness as you look at that drawing from any oblique angle. And that's probably going to aesthetically look a little bit janky. Janky meaning not so professional, not so great, a little bit disjointed, discombobulated, confusing, all those great terms. And so I would suggest, you can experiment. Quite frankly, I haven't done a ridiculous amount of experimenting because of what I just mentioned. I just know that about the two of them. And so I kind of separate them out and I either use one or the other, or, I might use charcoal powder with charcoal pencil. And in charcoal pencils, I might use some Wolf carbons, which are a little bit more like graphite charcoal pencils. They act a little bit more like a hybrid between the two. And I would use that to do my drawing, right? I would use a variety of charcoals, but I wouldn't be mixing and matching Click pencils with charcoal pencils they don't like to play well together. So that's my take on it. Will you find somebody out there that maybe found some perfect paper combination that's done, that's all, what they do? Probably, most likely. And you may want to take it up with them a little bit more if that's something that you're really dying to do. But I think it's not necessary, number one. And I think, this drawing is going to be, when I finish it, I'm pretty confident it'll be a really good drawing. I hope a great drawing. And I hope it has, an incredible feel to it. But I don't find any need to put charcoal onto it, really. So I'll stick with graphite primarily on this one.
So this question sort of dovetails into that one with Squeen asking, what is the best way to enhance contrast with graphite? And have you ever used carbon pencils?
I mean, again, there's only so much option with drawing, right? You've got your value scale, and in order to make your halftone, if you go really dark with your halftones, the guy's either going to have a black or dark complexion or extremely tan, but you only have so many options. In order for those halftones to make sense, you've got to go darker with your shadows. But when you've exhausted the full extent of your shadows, you've gone full black, you have to go lighter in your halftones. There's nothing else you can do to get the contrast, right? You have this, it's like you only have so much saturation of color in a palette. And once you've exhausted that color, all you can do is gray things down around it to make the color look brighter. You can't go any brighter. You've exhausted the potential of that medium to do what you're asking it to do. Then you have to be very creative with how you utilize concepts and information like grays in order to make it look more the way you want it to. And those are the really only two options you have. Now, when you're working in pixels or light with the digital, you've got a different ability to use you're using light to paint with, more or less, pixels. And that's, quite a bit more vibrant than any pigment that we have, So digital paintings are always going to have a higher saturation level and more punchy contrast than a traditional painting. Even if you're using, Rolls-Royce oil paint, full cadmiums, full fully strong, full chroma paint, you can only get so bright. And that's something that we have to deal with when we go out and paint from life and from nature is painting with light. We're painting with a incredibly handicapped pigment that has to look like light. So we have to use all kinds of cheap theatrics, juxtapositions of warms and cools against each other to make them look like they're vibrating. We have to use all these advanced concepts in order to get the illusion of reality through a limited medium, okay? And that's always going to be challenging. It's always going to be challenging. But you look at people like Joaquin Sorolla or someone like that just knocked it out of the park when it came to depicting reality with pigment. But those are the painters you'd want to go to and say, I need to do some closer detective work here with this painter because this is what I'm talking about. This guy or gal or whoever it is has really nailed what you can do with paint to make it look like reality. And I want to get some of that in my painting. So since this guy's dead and he can't talk to me, I'm gonna have to reconstruct his paintings through master studies, through small, whatever, reverse engineer it. Like you found a UFO, and you got to figure out how the damn thing works. You got to tear it apart and figure out what kind of propulsion system works, and how it does. And how are you going to do that? You can't talk to the people that built it. So you got to sit there. Well, I'm just saying if this was hypothetical. I mean, most of you are like, dude, they're not even real. But let's say it was. That's what you'd have to do. So in painting, you have to do the same thing. You have to go back a lot of times because those guys didn't leave a program like Watts Atelier or Proko or these other ones. They didn't have this big library for you to go and just listen to the guys that actually created it, talk about their what they do and how they do it. So you guys are in very good positioning right now to learn way faster than I even did, or Stan, or the ones that didn't have access to this new technological advancement in communication. So you guys are in good positioning. So I hope that answered somewhat that. I don't know. I maybe got a little off tangency there, but that's not unlike me. Go ahead.
So Two Romantic Art asks, I love your art and your work. I would like to ask you and the reader, but only you can answer for advice. If at almost 40 years it is too late to reach professional levels, is thinking about it just madness? In parentheses, have been trying to improve for about 5 years. I have the desire to become almost decent in drawing and in art, to learn from about 10. And trying to learn from about 10. For the first 5, I would say I threw them into asking me if it made sense in worst attempts. By age, maybe, I should draw, but without expectations on the level. Instead, the technical question is that I would like to ask you and the reader if shading, at least the graphite, is possible without any stump, without mixing, without stubs. I would like to use them, but first improving, but shading is the thing with which a lot more. I like hatching, but for a long time, I thought not to use it to improve or anything else. So I guess.
Well, I kind of get the gist of it. I mean, the main thing you're asking, is it too late to give it a good run at 40? And I would say no, not at all. But what you are up against is time, like we all are. And every one of us doesn't know how long we have. So even though you're 40, you might be 21 right now and only live to be 28. And so you don't realize you only got 5 years. You didn't know that, right? So we don't know. We don't know. But if given an 80 to 90 year productive, I mean, like my dad's 78, still kicking it. He's doing amazing work into his 80s, right? That's pretty rare, but it does happen. Schmidt did it. I mean, there's a lot of artists that do it, right? So you got another 40 years. The thing that you don't have is you can't sit and just stab in the dark with your training methodology. That would be really foolish because you don't have time to explore, experiment, and dilly-dally. So you need to go right to the best possible program, source, educator, teachers, spend the money, invest the money, and don't try to cheat it. Don't try to be cheap. Don't try to I'm going to try to do it this way and hack it. You're only going to spin your wheels and go around in circles like a dog chasing your tail. Trust me. So you're going to have to invest. So if you're willing to invest time and money and energy correctly, 5 years from now, you could be phenomenal. You could be drawing kind of like what I am, probably, or in the ballpark. Or you could be drawing exactly the same way you are right now. But even by drawing a lot, right? You could draw every day, ingrain tons of bad habits, studying the wrong people, listening to the wrong people, and end up 5-6 years from now in a worse place than you are now. And I've seen it happen many, many times. Now that's depressing to say, but more depressing to experience, real time, right? So when I talk to someone like you, I say, yeah, it's totally possible. I've seen people do crazy cool stuff, but you got to be really on your A game with your training regimen. You've got to be smart. You've got to train with, like I said, the right people, right sources. You've got to cut right to the chase, and you don't have time to experiment with 22 different schools and try to find which one was good and which one's not. Oh, that one I did for 4 years and it was a waste of money and time. And oh, now I realize that sent me over to this other one. Now that's a little bit better. Oh, and then I finally found our school or Grand Central or something. Oh man, it took me 400 grand and 6 years to find that. You don't have that luxury, right? You just don't. So you can't be wasting time. So that's what I would say is first is, yes, you can do it. And I would never let anyone tell you otherwise. It's really up to you. You've got to be smart. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to be focused. You've got to be intelligent. And you've got to learn these methods. And it's going to take time, money, and energy. There's no way around it. So how much time, money, and energy do you have? I don't know. I don't know. That's a big question mark, right? For anybody teaching you. And we won't know until we see you for a while doing stuff. And how do you process information? And how good you emulate? And how intelligently do you train? And how focused are you when you do train? Are you ADHD? Are you bipolar? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know these things, right? I don't know how you're wired. Once I would get to know you a little bit, I would probably have a lot more opinion about what and how you should move forward. But I've worked with some incredibly brilliant minds and some incredibly unique ones, mine included. And it's as much an art as a science. Teaching people, you have to really be committed to understanding their inner workings of how they process information. The only way to do that is to be around them, see them, experience what they're doing. Now you can do that virtually through again, sending in your drawings, and a guy like me that's been doing it for 30 years could really quickly assess where your big problems are and probably what needs to be done to rectify them. But ideally, in an ideal world, you'd be sitting right here next to me, and I'd be talking to you mano a mano, getting your body language, the energy that you're putting out. How are you processing? Are you fragmented? Are you clear thinking? Are you all over the place? How do you operate? And then I would know more how challenging this is going to be for you, how long it might take. I could maybe make it a somewhat educated observational decision, but it would still be based simply, you could still prove me wrong. You could still prove me wrong. But I have seen an awful lot. I've met an awful lot of people. I've shepherded an awful lot of people from point A to point B, meaning from very rudimentary levels to very elite levels. And I have seen the patterning. I know it like the back of my hand almost. So I can sense, these things. And that's again, a part of a good teacher, a really excellent teacher, is intuition. Not just sit down, do this, do that. I'll be back next week. I'll check on you. It's not in that. You got to be in the trenches with them. You've got to be taking them through it. And it takes an immense amount of energy from both parties. This is why you will very seldom see teachers of that caliber. You can count them on your hand. And throughout history, you can count them on your hand. Literally. So it's rare. It is very rare to find a committed teacher, a teacher that's committed to getting you better than them. But that's what you're going to need. And at your age, you're going to definitely need it. So what I would say is, do not lose faith. Ask yourself very deep questions. Is it absolutely necessary for some reason that I monetize this and make money at it? And if you don't need to do that, then I still want you to work as hard to be the best you can be, but I want you to do it from an altruistic, loving place, not from I need to show off, I need someone to buy my painting for 100 grand in order for me to feel fulfilled, I need to go work at Pixar in order to feel good. I know how good I am. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to go prove that I can hold my own with Nathan Falks at DreamWorks. I know I could. I don't need to know that I could hold my own with Jeremy Lipkine, in an art show at Arcadia Gallery. I know I could. I don't need to know any of that, right? So it puts you in a place of relaxed confidence that you don't need superficial acknowledgement in order for you to feel accomplished and whole. You just need yourself to feel that way. And only you can only do that for yourself. No one can do that for you. So these are big, deep questions that need to be asked, right? Because the motivation, when I hear your question, I'm a little confused as to why, number one, you need to get to this ridiculous level so quickly. If it's a life goal of yours, then you've got plenty of time, but you still need to make good decisions, and if you want to fulfill that. But you've got to ask yourself, what are the perimeters for fulfilling what it is that you're looking to fulfill? Because that's more important than the actual work itself. Why are you doing it? Would be the first question I would ask you. And a lot of people would probably be stumped by that one, because I don't think a lot of teachers ask them that kind of stuff. Like, we're going to teach you how to draw an edge. And here's the matter. They don't want to dig under the surface because it means it's vulnerable. You've got to get into people's baggage. You've got to unpack their crap and figure out what's wrong, or their stuff, and figure out, like, hey, what's making this person motivate them? And this is where you get into complicated teaching and complicated learning. But if you can go there with somebody and they can trust you, and you build a level of trust through showing them time and time again that you know what you're talking about, then you can start to slowly walk that walk with them and take them on that journey. And you can be like a really good friend or a really good guide on a long journey, right? That just makes the journey so much more doable, enjoyable, enriching, because this person has got your back. They've got you. They know where you're going, and they know how to get you there. And then you just have to, do the time, and put the time in. And that's not a big deal, I don't think, because the time's going to go by anyway. So let's get somewhere really tangible by the end of it, rather than just being stuck in the mud and staying in the exact same place, and 10 years later you haven't gotten any further down the road. You want to, so this is my kind of my take on it. So good luck, and best of luck to you. There's a lot of options out there for you now. So you're in the best place you could ever be in as far as time in history to be learning this stuff, in my opinion. It's got its own challenges with the internet age that we live in, but mostly good stuff for artists. So best of luck to you. And maybe I'll see you in some of our classes down the road. Would love to. Okay, notice how what I'm doing here is I'm just filling it in, but I don't have strong enough shadows to support all these crazy halftones. So right now when I look at these halftones, they look a little bit piecemeal. They look a little bit fragmented, broken down. Why? Because we don't have the proper value to support them. Now I have to know that in this part of the drawing. Otherwise I'm going to freak myself out. So I've got to say, okay, yes, I know it looks fragmented. Note to self, need to unify, need to bring together. All this needs to be linked. A lot needs to be lost. A lot needs to be smeared out. Drawing stumps need to be used to blend little edges. Halftones need to be, but like once this shadow in here gets darker, these won't look so obvious. Once the black of the hair gets in and the black background gets in, there'll be a different, all these shapes are going to feel differently, right? So now these are drawing stumps, and you use them just as ways of, again, blending, soft blending. You can use them for, I don't like to take out all my scratchy work because I like a blend between silky and textural. So I want cross contouring. I want like linear accents injected into my tonal feel. So it's a perfect blend between, well, not perfect, but that would be that's what I'd be aspiring to, is a very nice blend between tonal and linear. And that's the drawings I like most personally. Other people like them when they're just really smooth and there's no, it's like painting, Some people like really brushy, sexy brushwork paintings, and other people like ones like Bouguereau that are just silky smooth. It's really up to, that's where you got to start making some opinions as you get a little bit better. Go ahead, if you have another question.
So Josh Hicks, we know from our online and streaming program, asks, "Hi Jeff, have you ever had the chance to think about when the next Watts boot camp will be? Or are there still too many things up in the air to begin thinking much about it?"
Hey Josh, I want to do it as much as anybody, but I just, like this whole, everybody's knee deep in uncertainty and fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. And we just need to get through that. And once we start seeing some, which we're starting to do, some clarity from the powers that be, which is, you wouldn't think that'd be too much to ask for, but we are getting there. And at that point, we can, with more confidence, put it on the schedule. I would say probably most likely next fall. this fall's already here. We always do the boot camp in the fall. And, we're going to be obviously missing it this year. So the next year, I would hope, and all things being equal, we will do it next probably September or August or somewhere in that time frame. And it's a wonderful, fun, for those of you who don't know what Josh is talking about, we used to do once a year a thing we would call the Watts Atelier boot camp. And we would have all the teachers participate. So you have access to pretty much the whole school. Most, I'd say good 3/4 of the teachers, like my dad doesn't do it, but Jim doesn't, sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. But what we do is we do a Cliff Note version of the school in 8 days. So you get a little bit of landscape, a little bit of portrait, you get a little bit of long drawing, a little bit of master studies, a little bit of quick sketch, a little bit of head drawing, a little bit of 20-minute, So we do a little bit of everything, a little bit of anatomy, a little bit of, but it's just giving you an opportunity to see firsthand how we do what we do and how we teach the way we do. And it's great for someone who's thinking of maybe moving out to San Diego to take classes with us in person. It's great if you just have been on the online program for a couple years and you just want to actually come in person and meet all the guys you've been studying with from distance, all the teachers, Meadow, Eric, Lou, all of us. We've had a couple guys step down recently, but that just happens periodically. Many of my teachers, I would say most of them are 13 to 15 plus years. So most of the artists were trained here originally, have become professionals, and continue to stay and teach. So we do the boot camp in order for people to either just come in and it's almost like a working vacation for people. It could be seen as such, or it could be actually an opportunity, again, to scan or to check out the environment and see if it's a place you want to move to. Because, moving here from other places is expensive and time consuming and requires a lot of planning, and you want to kind of go into that well educated and not just on a whim. So it's a good opportunity for that. So yeah, I'd say next fall would be, Josh, would probably be the soonest I could think of it happening. I'm just kind of, I'm choked up pretty far back on it. I'm not gripped up here. I don't have a death grip on it. I'm not like, really, powerfully handling it. I'm just very, just filling in and kind of going with and against form. Sometimes you might see me pull away from a core shadow with some inking type strokes. For those of you who don't ink a lot, inking's a wonderful medium for learning indication and interpretation of line, tone through line. And so that's one of the best mediums for it. Graphite's right up there with it as well. So those two kind of dovetail nicely. Charcoal's going to go more probably pure tonal. And you're not going to be using as much of the fine cross contouring because just the tips dull quickly and the charcoal, and hard to get in there and do all that little subtle stuff that you can do with a little click pencil like the one I'm using right now, which is wonderful for. But right now, so I'm not trying to get more out of this pencil than I can get. Once it starts exhausting itself, then I need to go to the next softer pencil, the next softer, and the next softer, as I build my way up to a full value range. I'm not going to try to get black out of this HB. I'll end up scoring the paper and marking the paper, grinding into the paper an actual mark that I don't want. So be careful with that, okay? Next question.
Zulu asks, what would be your approach to studies and studying another artist's work? So doing master studies.
Master studies, I'm a huge fan of, both painting and drawing. I've taught it, more times than I can count. The class, we have the class running with Ben on the streaming this next term. So if you want to go check Ben out doing master studies and you just want to audit it, it's like $50, $10 per hour demo. It's just a freaking smoking bargain. So if you want to go watch him do it, he'll walk you through how he does master studies. I think he's doing some fantastic ones. I mean, I saw he did an Elfgren. I think he's doing a Bouguereau or something. I mean, I can't remember exactly which ones. I know he did Elfgren, but so that's one you can watch somebody like that do it and walk you through it and tell you how to do it. And that's a great way to go. It's really just you've got to sit down with a drawing or a painting and basically strip it down and build it back up again, which kind of is a catch-22 because in order to do that, you kind of already need to be pretty good at drawing. Otherwise, how are you going to tear it apart if you don't know what you're tearing apart? So it is a bit of a conundrum. That's why you work, again, I know it sounds like I'm always selling you on a product, but I believe in what I do. I believe in how we teach. And so the solution is never going to be just, oh, hey, by the way, you go do XYZ. There is no XYZ that's that easy. The thing is, you got to tear this drawing apart and rebuild it. And what better way to do it than sit down with someone who's done 600, 200 of them and walk you through how to do that. But can I verbally tell you that in 10 seconds? No, no one could. So you're stuck with either taking a class, if you can find it, online or in person, or you're going to have to find little snippets on the internet, whatever, of people doing master studies. Luckily, those things even exist now. If it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have been like, dude, you're SOL. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do. I don't have an answer for you. And I can't explain it to you in 2 minutes over the phone or something, So, you're going to have to come into class and pony up the $300 or whatever and sit down for 10 weeks and we're going to have to walk you through it. And I'll give you a piece of reference on a Bugaro and you're going to sit down and I'm going to demo it and you're going to draw it. And we're going to go through it together and we're going to learn how this particular artist breaks down their idea structure and how they interpret reality. And we're going to try to get some of that into you and we're going to try to get it to stick as best we can. But one drawing isn't going to cut it. So you might have to do 10 or 15 drawings from this guy over the next year to really start deciphering what you like from Bugaro and what you're going to get out of him. I'm just talking about him hypothetically. But so yeah, I don't have an easy answer on, hey, how do you do master studies? Slowly and methodically and well. I don't know. I mean, it's some artists are extremely design sensitive. Some aren't. Some are really smooth. Some are somewhere in between. And all of them leave different clues as to how they do what they do. But we need to decipher those clues, and then we need to cherry pick out of them the ones that are pertinent for our development so that we don't waste our time or we don't fill our head with unnecessary information that needs to be retained and memorized and committed to memory and retained and also practiced in order to continue to retain it. So we want to be very surgical about what we put into our mind and who we study. So you've got to ask yourself, what artists do I want to do master studies of? Who do I want to work like? Okay, now a lot of people say, well, I don't want to work like anyone. I want to look like me, and I don't want to study these people because it's going to be a bad habit. And I go, well, okay, well, good luck. You'll have a hard time finding it. We stand on the shoulders of giants, meaning that we utilize people that have come before us in the visual arts by copying them in order to know what they know or learn what they knew. Now, if you can go to the source and find out, well, okay, how did they study? What books did they study? Who did they study from? But a lot of that's gone, right? It's just gone. That's why we're trying to resurrect a bygone era of training that doesn't exist anymore. It got lost in the shuffle, right? It's unfortunate. But some of us, myself included, have spent their whole life trying to jumpstart that system, right? And it's not easy, and it hasn't been always well received, and it's not always fun, as someone on the front lines of doing it. But ultimately, you either have a passion for that, and it drives you forward, or you don't. And what you want to find, all of you, are the artists that have a true passion for teaching, not the ones that do it just to make a little extra money, not the ones that do it because they want idol worship and want a bunch of people to blow wind up their butt, about how good they are. You don't want any of that. That's not what you're after. You're after someone who really has committed their life to getting you good. Right? They've committed most of their creative energy to saying, I'm going to get other people good versus just getting myself good and then running off and doing my thing and letting everybody else drown on the sideline. There's a lot of that happens, right? It's just, artists can be that way, sometimes. But a lot of artists are kind, and a lot of them are giving, and a lot of them want to help and share what they know. I've seen that firsthand. And you want to surround yourself by those kind of artists. And Stan is bringing you a lot of those people. Okay, I'm doing it my own way at our atelier. Florence Academy is doing it their own way in their atelier. What you need to do is find what works best for you, and it might be a hodgepodge of different resources, right? It might be a little this and a little that, and you might start with Stan and then come over to us afterwards, or you might do vice versa. It really is up to you. All I can do is do what I've always done, which is get people good in the methods that I've found work, through trial and error and through 30 years of trial and error, right? And say, okay, this seems to work, and it's worked for many, 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 many people. So we're going to adjust it a little bit, but we're going to keep the general the general feel of it more or less the same. Now this is a core shadow coming down his back here, and it's running into the multifidus, it's running into some ribs, it's running into the latissimus cape. We've got the traps coming in here. So like, for example, this little line right through here is part of the trapezius. Here, down here, here, and it will attach somewhere along the spine, maybe in this vicinity of where my pencil's at, right? So we need to know that. So there's a subtle line right there that you can barely even see, and I've kind of accentuated it, made it more obvious. But I don't want these little pieces everywhere to jeopardize the overall integrity of that trapezius shape. So what we have is the trapezius has, underneath the trapezius, there's ribs, there's right next to it a scapula, and these are affecting the overall, piece right there. So I need to put those in, but I don't want them to break the piece down too much. So you notice, you see me using my finger a little bit now to start to knock things down a little bit, meaning smear it a little bit and get rid of some of the intensity of it. Or I might blot it out with my little kneaded eraser very judiciously, very carefully, conscientiously, or a combination thereof, and then I might knock it back with my finger again. Or I might use it, decide to go over and get a drawing stump and put a little glaze to get these shapes to close down together and become a little bit more subtle. Okay, that's when you start dialing in your halftones. But again, should I be dialing in those halftones right now when I don't have a full black established? The honest answer would be no. So I need to refrain from that. I need to back off a little bit and continue. But you can see this is my middle value range, fill in the map stage. After this, I will take another acute look at it, and I will assess whether or not my decisions were made correctly, because I still have one last opportunity to correct, to erase, to move before I commit. And once I commit, it's not coming out of that surface. And that's where you want to be on your A game, right? Well, you want to be on your A game the whole way through, but that's where you really are going to start dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and really bringing it up to what we would call a rendered finish. And that's the fun part, really. This part is a lot like digging a ditch, laying the trench, putting the cinder blocks in, laying the rebar, dumping in the concrete, and then you get to where you get to put the veneer on, the stone, the whatever that makes it look pretty. But what's underneath that pretty needs to be structurally sound. And that's what we're doing right now. We're laying the foundational components of the drawing, and then we'll finish it off, full value. That's what I'm talking about. I looked over at Andrew just to see if there was all right. Any questions?
WIMU asks, hello, Jeffrey. I'm pretty much a beginner, and I wanted to ask, how many hours per week should I practice to eventually get better? Thanks in advance.
Again, it's up to each individual, that's like a loaded question, because it's like, if I said 60 hours a week, you'd say, well, I'm going to burn myself out. I'm a beginner. And I said, well, if you don't want to beginner for long, then do more work and you'll get past the beginning stage quicker, right? So it basically comes down to sweat equity. Like, how do you get past the beginning stage? You work through it. How fast do you want to work through it? Do you want to stretch out the beginning phase for 4 years and do a couple hours a day or a couple hours a week and not get a lot of movement? Because you get out what you put in. So even as a beginner, but you want to make sure you put in really well-educated, smart training, right? You don't want to be all over the place. I sketchbook for 20 minutes and then I go over and do some charcoal drawing and then I'm over doing some painting and then nothing happened, right? You just did a bunch of kind of confusing techniques that don't work out well off of each other unless you're already really good. And you just kind of end up, kind of spinning your wheels. So what we need to do is get you on a nice foundational course, so you'd start, head drawing fundamentals, maybe with figure drawing fundamentals. And you're learning how to sharpen the pencil properly, and you're learning how to sit properly at the drawing board. You're learning how to pick good reference, and you're learning what is mannequinizing, and how do I break the figure down into cylinders and spheres and cones, and can I even draw a cone, is my pencil even sharpened well enough and do I know how to hold it properly? I mean, these are the things you need to be worried about, right, and thinking about. And so you need someone to kind of, again, ramp you through that. But how many hours did I spend? 60 a week? 70? I don't know. I took 10 to 13 classes a week at 3 hours a piece, so multiply that out, and then I went home and did at least that much at home. So yeah, I was pretending like it was a full-time job. So I was doing 40 to 60 hour work week, just like you would if you were doing a hardcore, regular job. Now, most people would say that's ludicrous. I'm not going to do that. That's fanatical. That's ridiculous. And I said, well, okay. But I took and got good in 2-3 years what took people 10 years to do. So I wanted to cram 10 years into 3. I'm going to have to work 10 times as hard as the person that's going to do it in 10. That's just the way it is. I mean, the way I see it. Now, not everybody's cut out to do that. And if you're not cut out to do that, then don't do that. But you're going to stretch out the foundational, beginning years a lot longer. So the only way to get good is to do something correctly and regularly and consistently, and you'll get results. But if you're all over the place, I draw for a week, then I miss 2 weeks, and then I draw for a couple days, and then I don't draw for another week, and you're never going to get any traction. You're going to always be staying pretty much at the same level because there's no forward momentum getting created. And so you have to be consistent. Now, I would say consistent 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day would be great. A good 3-hour chunk of time is wonderful. Most people say, I can't find 3 hours. I'm lucky if I get 1 hour in. Okay. Well, then we know the reality of the situation is you can only do an hour. But just know you're going to move really slow. Okay? And if that doesn't frustrate you, then you're fine. But if the person says, well, no, I want to move faster. Well, then do more. I can't do more. I don't have the time. Then you're in trouble. You're in a conundrum. You can't fix the problem you have. It's like, there's all the kinds of analogies I can use that probably aren't really appropriate, but it's just, you're banging your head against the wall, right? So don't do that. Be realistic, not idealistic. So think about it and say, how much time, money, and energy do I really have to donate to this thing? And if you're down around a couple hours, just do it for fun, would be my suggestion. Because you can't get much more traction out of it than that, right? It takes too much, there's too much more time. It's like saying, I want to be a professional elite athlete, but I can only train for an hour a day. And any coach is going to say, impossible, not going to happen. Not going to happen, period. Now, is that being mean? No, I don't think so. It's being realistic. Does the person want to hear it? Probably not. But that's their issue, right? Not yours. You're trying to tell them, hey, this is what, as I know. Now, if you want to prove me wrong and you want to go try to do it in 1 hour and get phenomenal as sergeant, God bless you. Go for it. But when it doesn't happen, don't be disappointed, was what I would say. I'm saying, well, what did you think was going to happen? So I'm not trying to be mean. What I'm trying to do is just say, be very cognizant of your situation. Be honest with yourself. It doesn't benefit you or anybody else to be not dishonest with yourself. So just say, honestly, I can only do X, Y, Z, and then ask me, okay, I can only do this. How much can I really realistically expect to get if I do that? And I wouldn't be able to tell you with absolute certainty, but I would be able to probably say, well, based on what I would probably frame it something like, based on what I've seen and what I know, I would assess that to put you on a 10-year course of action to get decent or whatever, take you 10 or 12 years, and that person might not believe me or might be mad at me for saying that. But it would still be just my opinion based on what I know. And I'm a pretty educated guy in this area, so some people would say, well, I'd probably listen to him, Doesn't mean you can't try to prove me wrong, but I would just say, it might be worth listening to someone that really has spent their whole life training people and say, okay, yeah, I didn't want to, that's not the answer I wanted to hear, but I'll take it into consideration. And thank you for, enlightening me in that way or whatever. So anyway, best of luck to you, but don't like give up and don't get, you're just a beginner, right? So just enjoy being the beginner's mind, it is what we call it in different areas. And that's just being able to own the fact that you're a beginner. It's a beautiful place to be, but just make sure that you look for somebody to help guide you through that. Again, the sources are out there now, and you'll have to make your own decision in education as to which one you choose. But I would try to get yourself in some program that can help guide you along so that you don't feel like you're in it all alone. That would probably be my suggestion. Next question?
We are at about 3:20. I know that
Oh yeah, I've got it. Yeah, okay, thank you. It's actually my dad's birthday tonight. He's 78. He's a phenomenal artist. If you ever, look him up sometime on Instagram. He's funny. He's close to 80, but he's just right in there, still learning digital painting. He's phenomenal. He's pretty much a national treasure in my opinion. But yeah, check him out. I hope you enjoyed what I got to show you here. It's not everything, right? It's just me laying in the next layer of this drawing. Once the full value gets in, the background gets in and everything, it's going to be, I think, a really, really beautiful drawing. Maybe I'll send a finish to Stan or something and post it or something at some point when I get done with the class. But if you'd like to watch it, again, feel free to come on over and audit it for $50, and you can watch me do this drawing from start to finish. Or you can, and you get the reference as well, so you can still draw along with me. I just won't be doing personal critiques for you each week. But if you do want the personal critiques, then take it full participation, and I'll be actually doing a tracing layer for you each week for about 15 minutes, addressing your specific questions and issues. And that's something that and all of our teachers do the same thing. So you could basically pick a name out of a hat. So really honored to be here. Again, Stan is doing an absolutely fantastic job over there, and I'm so proud of him and proud of what he's accomplished, and I'm wishing you guys all the best out there. I'm a very intense guy, but I have a lot of love for people that try to do this stuff, and I hope it comes off from a loving place, because man, if you just enter my room of the school, you've got nothing but respect for me. This is not an easy thing to learn to do, but it is doable. Just remember that, and it's doable from any age. So if you're in your 40s or you're in your 20s or you're whatever, if you're younger and you can get good education, it's going to help you immensely. And if you're older, it's absolutely essential that you get good education if you want to get decent at this stuff. So have fun, keep your head up high, just enjoy. And art's a wonderful thing to take you through all the trials and tribulations of life. It's a wonderful, wonderful activity just from a soulful, healthy level. But if you try to make a profession of it, it can also be absolutely wonderful. But you definitely want to be in that upper echelon level, because that's where the funnest jobs are and the most enjoyable, highest paying, all that kind of good stuff. And they are out there and they are doable. So best of luck to you, and I hope you have a lot more fun here at Lightbox and all the other great artists that he's got coming in. I mean, you've got a lot of good stuff to look forward to. So take care, everybody.